So you've already seen a video on what a credit report is and what a credit score is and why it's important. But we should talk about what actually goes into a credit report and a credit score so that way we actually know how to read them. So because of this Fair and Accurate Credit Reporting Act, which was passed in 2003, everyone's entitled to view their credit report from each of the three agencies, or the three credit bureaus, and those are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. So Experian and Equifax. Nope, not Equation. Equifax. Once a year for free. You don't have to view them all at the same time. So maybe I'll write that in too. So say like not necessarily at the same time. Whoops. And in some cases, it actually might be better not to view them all at the same time. You might want to choose to space them out instead, which would actually wind up giving you 3 free credit checks during a year. But that depends on the financial situation you're in, and we can talk about some of the nuances of that in class. And one thing I do want to mention is that in my experience, I've noticed that Equifax does not provide an electronic report. You have to actually fill out paperwork, submit documents in order to get their credit report, which is not great in this age. I've got my thoughts about it, but we'll talk about that in class. So there are 4 major sections of a credit report, and we want to kind of be aware of what goes where, so we know what we're looking for and we know what we're reading. And the first one is personal information, and that should be fairly self-explanatory. All right, these are going to be obviously your name, your address, but both your address and any former addresses, because after all, the information on your credit report stays for up to 7 years. So if you've moved any time in the last 7 years, then it's going to show that. Any employers, anything like that, that might help identify who you are. Again, current and former. I'll mention that this is kind of back over at least 7 years, 7 years-ish. But anything that would be there to identify you as a person. And that's basically it. It's pretty straightforward. The next big section would be any accounts that you have. And this is definitely the largest section for sure, because it's going to list any type of credit line that you have open. So they're going to talk about any type of credit that you have, who it's with, credit or loan, so who it's with, whether it's still open or closed. So that would mean if it's closed, then you've either maybe canceled the credit card or paid off the loan. The payment status, so if you've fallen behind on a payment, if it's a credit card, it might show your credit line, your credit limit. And they're also going to show a running record of payments over 84 months or 7 years. So over 7 years. 84 months. And this is what makes this section the most important, is this part right here. And it's the one thing that when you're checking your credit report, you want to look at yourself. Because if there have been any sort of late payments, it's going to show up. If there's been a late payment, but you've had it fixed, you've had it corrected by whatever the lender is. So maybe it was something in error and you actually paid it on time, they logged it wrong. You want to check and make sure that's actually been taken care of. It's not going to show how much you've paid. So it's not going to show the amount, it's just going to show if it's on time or not. So that's something that you really want to look into and you really want to check carefully. You can check for any types of accounts that maybe were opened without your permission or without you knowing. So this is a really important section. It's really the main section of the credit report. And the next one is public records, and this is kind of a curious one to really show up, but it actually is important. You might not think so at first just by looking at it, but when you think about what a public record is, these are things like filing for bankruptcy, having an account go into collections, which means you have been unable to pay the lender responsibly. They have to send somebody to kind of enforce that payment. Any sort of court cases, so any sort of judgments on your finances, again, so things like collections, things like maybe wage garnishing. So again, maybe you can't afford to make your payments and do it responsibly, so they're just going to pull out of your paycheck. They're going to find a way to do it. Things like repossession, stuff like this. Or also any tax liens. And what a tax lien is just some sort of, again, some sort of condition that you need to satisfy, some sort of outstanding problem that you need to have fixed. Some states, as I said before, might also include some sort of note on repossessions or foreclosure, but this seems to vary by state. And while everything else can show up on your credit report for 7 years, including these public records, bankruptcy is a little bit different. Bankruptcy can show up on your credit report for up to 10 years. But we can kind of keep track of how long it's been present on our account because the date at which the event will be removed from your credit report is stated in that entry. So kind of the removal date is posted. And that's true of anything really on this account. If there's on a credit report, if there's anything that needs to be removed or anything that can be removed, it will show up in that credit report. The last one is kind of the second most important, and that's credit inquiries. And there are two types of credit inquiries. We have hard inquiries, and these are inquiries where you actually go to apply for credit. And this is the process by which that the lender needs to assess if you're actually creditworthy. So the lender kind of asks, are you creditworthy? Oops. Are you creditworthy? Can I trust you to make this payment and take out this loan? These are the ones that typically do count for or against your credit score. Because if the lender turns around and says, nope, I cannot trust you to make this loan, to take this loan, that's not going to look good for you. But soft credit inquiries don't seem to hurt your credit score, at least not as much as a hard inquiry. This is when companies look into your credit history for other purposes. This might be, some employers will actually look at your credit score and your credit report. If you're trying to get pre-approved for a loan, that would be considered a soft inquiry. Those are really the main two I could come up with, I can think of. But I know there are other cases. I just can't come up with them off the top of my head. But I do know, actually, one could be also if you're looking to rent an apartment, they might look into your credit report just to look over it, just to kind of see how you've been in the past. So this is also if accounts are the largest and the most important section of your credit score, your credit report, credit inquiries are just as important because they also can really make or break your credit worthiness and kind of show your history. The other two things I guess that would also show up on a credit report is maybe some type of personal statement, but this is usually in the event of some kind of a fraudulent activity. So fraud, I can't spell tonight, fraudulent activity. So maybe your account gets compromised, your credit card gets hacked, you notice there's some sort of fraudulent purchase or fraudulent account that was set up. Well, you can contact the credit bureau to place a statement on your account that basically says, I was a victim of fraud. Please contact me directly to verify any credit applications. So it's almost like a two-factor verification type of thing. Let's just say like contact me to verify applications to ensure that I am really the one that is trying to open this account, trying to take out this loan. The last one is any sort of error. And obviously if there's an error, this is a big deal. We want to make sure we take care of it. If there's an error, you're going to file what we call a dispute. with that credit agency. So with either TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian, wherever you notice the error is, that's where you're going to go. This is typically done by mail, still today, because you want to make sure that you're actually providing documentation. And these agencies are going to want hard copies because they're more official. It's going to be harder to forge or harder to fabricate if you have the physical copy and you're sending it in. However, agencies have begun to allow electronic disputes. I haven't gone through one, obviously, to know kind of the ins and outs in it, know if there's any sort of, oh, you can start it electronically but have to finish it by mail. But I know in checking my own credit reports and trying to be responsible that way, that there is an option sometimes to file disputes electronically. Again, it might just be to get the ball rolling and then they turn around and try to finish it by mail, but I do know that option has started to crop up. So these are kind of the nuts and bolts of the end of talking about a credit score and talking about a credit report, kind of just the different sections that exist when doing this.